How many of us have a memory of ourselves as a child or a child that comes up to us, their shins bloodied and battered, and they desire to have their wounds treated? Within the heart of the child, there's an eager expectation that the parent that he comes to, the guardian that he or she comes to, will love them enough to clean and dress and bind the wound. There is never in the mind of this child in a healthy relationship an understanding that the ministry of the parent to the child could be fickle or unmet. You see what our God does for you? He finds you in this place of deep woundedness. And he comes near to you. And his delight and his desire is to see your wound and to dress it. To see your wound and to cleanse it. To see your wound, to see your hurt, and to meet you in that point of need, and to wrap that wound in his love. And this is the power of our God. And this is his tenderness mixed together, that our God perfectly meets us in the point of our woundedness, and he heals all broken hearts. He next says, God has sent me to proclaim liberty to the captives, to the opening of the prison, to those who are bound. One of the things we see within inside this is the power of this king. The people of Israel assumed that their future was to live in captivity, that they would be taken, that they would be held, that they would be maintained, that they would be enslaved. And as they stayed in their slavery, they had this fleeting hope of being released. But what we see in this is that the servant of God is so powerful that he is more powerful than any other king, that he is more powerful than any other thing that holds them captive, that he is more powerful than any other government. And what he does to them in their captivity is he bursts the bounds of their captivity and he sets them free. Do you know that this is what our God delights in doing for you today? Some of us, we came into this place and we could name our captivity. We could name our captor. Some of us, our captors are addictions, and we might name them alcohol, drugs, sex, being good. Some of us might name our various addictions and those things that hold us captive, those things that we feel that we are unable to overcome. And what we read in this passage is that Jesus Christ, the servant of God, comes near to us in the place of our brokenness. He not only administers to the place of our wound, but he also finds us held captive and he sets us free. We have to recognize our captivity. We have to desire for freedom more than we desire the numb that we receive at administering our captivity. How we treat our wounds, how we numb our hurts. Our God comes to bind our wounds. Our God comes to set us free, and he does so in the person of Jesus. And so he's administered to our wounds. He set us free from those things that enslave us. And he said he also comes to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of the vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn. Our God comes in the person of Jesus, and his declaration is a victory. His declaration is to an experience of the year of the Lord's favor. He invites you, he invites me to come into and experience what it is that God delights in you. And he longs for you to delight in him. He visits his justice on all those who do harm to his servants. And he comes that his servants might have an experience of joy and delight, and that unending. He doesn't say it's the year as if we're waiting for 2024 to roll it around in a few days and say, 2024 is going to roll around. That's going to be the year of the Lord's favor. Now, 2025, that's a whole other story. The year of the Lord's favor is a time period whereby when we come into relationship with Christ, that it knows no end. Look at what he says here. He says he is to comfort all who mourn. To comfort all who mourn. Many of us know exactly what it is like to be within the confines of mourning. And over this last year, some of us, we have felt what it is to mourn. We've lost brothers, we've lost sisters, we've lost our parents, we've lost our spouse, we've lost those people close to us. And in our experience of mourning, what we feel is that in our mourning, we are alone. No one joins us in our mourning. We're alone and we're crying out and we're broken, and we have this sense, this feeling that no one else is acquainted with grief like we are. But what is on offer for those of us who place our hope and trust in Jesus is a comfort in our mourning. You see, some of us experience mourning today, not as a result of having lost loved ones, but as a result of feeling this sense of separation in our relationships, horizontally, or in our relationship with God vertically, on the basis of the ways we have lived in the experience of sin in our lives. And so we're broken. We're mourning. And it is even in that mourning that the Lord God comes near to each of us, because his desire is that we would delight in him and experience joy unending. And so he joins us in our mourning. Others of us, we're not mourning the fact that we are caught in sin. In fact, probably what would be most true for some of us, is that what we're experiencing in mourning right now is that we're no longer saddened or troubled by the sense of separation we feel from God. We know what it used to be like when we'd be caught in sin. We don't have that sense of conviction. We don't have that sense of angst. We don't have that loving pull of God as it feels like it's pulling us back. And so right now, some of us, what we are mourning is the fact that we feel nothing. Can I tell you, no matter where you are on that spectrum, no matter where you find yourself, our God comes along to wake up dead hearts. And he comes to bring you comfort. Regardless of what your articulation, your experience of mourning feels like, our God is near to the brokenhearted, and he is near to all those who mourn. In fact, verse 3 comes in, and what Isaiah does is he paints this glorious picture of reversal. Of what God does is he brings change to the outside because of terrific change on the inside. The first thing he does, he says that he comes to the one. He comes to the one and he gives him a beautiful headdress instead of ashes. So within Isaiah's day and to a certain degree within Christ's day, if you were mourning, you would go and you put ashes on your head so that when people saw you, they would have this recognition that you were mourning. And so if Martha walks in and she has ashes on her head, if Ray walks in, he has ashes on his head, if Mark walks in, well, Mark's a different story. But if you walk in and you have ashes on your head, it's communicating to us they are mourning. There's something they're sorrowful about. There's something they're sad about. And what Isaiah says here is the servant of the Lord comes near to you and he removes from you the burden of sorrow and mourning, and he covers your head in a beautiful headdress, declaring that sadness which was internal is done away with, and what they are experiencing is the joy of the Lord. He said he doesn't just change this, he goes on and he anoints them with oil. It says the oil of gladness instead of mourning. They go out and they're covered with oil so that when people see them, they no longer think, I bet they're sad, I bet they're mourning. No, when they see them, what their experience of them is of gladness, because they see the radiant beauty of the Lord shining through their lives. This is the extent to which our God brings comfort to those in mourning. He says the garment of praise instead of a faint spirit, that our clothes would declare the goodness of our God and would declare our joy in him. We're not overcome with mourning because the joy of the Lord runs through our lives. It says that they may be called the oaks of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, that he may be glorified. Psalm 1:3 talks about a tree planted by streams of water that grows and produces fruit. What we read is that our God makes us steadfast. So many things in our lives and in our culture tell us that we can build ourselves up. We can pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. We can be independent. We can do this on our own. With enough grit and determination, we can do anything. The Christian message is the opposite. It's that our God can do anything in us, regardless of how pitiable our lives are. No matter what anyone thinks of us, God longs to plant you as a beacon of his love. And he places you, and he uses the metaphor of an oak to point at stability, to point at steadfastness. And notice that he doesn't say it's the oak of Bob or it's the oak of Susan, but it's the oak of righteousness, the planting of the Lord. And to what end and for what purpose? That he may receive glory. The whole reason God affects this cosmic exchange in our lives, swapping out mourning for joy, is so that when men and women encounter you, and they say, listen, I know you've experienced this loss, but what I don't have a sense in you is that the power of this loss is overcoming something in you. Can you tell me how? And you can say, oh man, the loss of my child broke me. The loss of my spouse, the loss of my friend destroyed me. It took me to the very end of myself, and I found that there was nothing left. And even in my sadness and my profound sorrow, my God stood firm by me. My friends walked out on me. They got tired of hearing me be sad. They said, can't you just be happy? Can't you just get over this? But my God, he delights in binding up the hearts of the broken. My God, he delights in being near to the poor. That's why I can have joy. That's why you see me as someone who is marked by the deep joy of the glorious gospel of Jesus instead of being marked and stuck in sadness and sorrow.